Okay, Sam can hear me, Nicholas. All right. All right, very good. All right, hit the wrong button there. But now, let's continue. Now, this CPU, it's hardware with your computer, but it is programmed to perform basic arithmetical, or, excuse me, algorithms, arithmetic, logic, input, output, etc. It's multi-processing. It does multiple things at once. All right, and these things are getting smaller and more powerful. Next, we're going to look at Moore's law about the advancement of processing capability and speed. Okay. Yes, and Mythbusters will be explaining it. And ladies and gentlemen, there will be some mix of delay because it's playing off my computer. So you will see a small voice display because also there's going to be a bit of delay on the mouth, the sound.
You know, if we were to use ourselves to represent the size to computing power ratio of old and new computer chips, one of us would end up being half the size of the other inside of roughly 24 months.
And would I be the old chip or the new chip?
You can be the new chip. Just how do we make you half my size?
Well, that's easy. Just move away from the camera.
Really?
Yeah, check this out.
Oh, that's good. All right, hold on. There we go. That's it. Look at that. Oh, that's great. That's a pretty convincing illusion. All right, go farther back.
Okay.
I just want to see how small we can get it. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, this forced perspective trick works great.
Yeah, but in order for you to correctly represent the last 35 years of advancement, at this point you'd be so small you'd be invisible to the naked eye. You know, strangely, even though he's tiny now, I'm still afraid of him. By 1971, the first microprocessor had shrunk the ENIAC down to this size. By 1980, you'd need this microscope to see it. By 1990, you'd need an electron microscope. Now, we can't afford an electron microscope until we get paid for this Intel gig, but here's what it would look like. In 1971, it wasn't much bigger than this mosquito, less than 1 square centimeter. By 1999, you could fit them into a space the size of a red blood cell, or 1/25,000th of an inch. Today, it's roughly the size of a single spike on one of these bacteria. Nobody knows the theoretical limit of how small transistors can get. All we know...
Can I get back to my normal size?
Sure. Here we go. There you go. That was almost convincing.
Yeah, I really like the practical effects better. But am I really back to full size?
Within acceptable tolerances, you're about 98%.
So,
okay, I can live with that.
With Moore's law, stating that the computing processing capability is making things happen, it's doubling about every 24 months. And that's the reason over the course of the years we go from these massive computers that are actually, they're limited, they're advanced for the times, but it's crazy what we've done in such a short period of time in all reality. Now, that's... Now, that was the power of small. I think we skipped. Yeah, I skipped Moore's law. Let's watch Moore's law.
As I understand it, Moore's law dictates that the number of transistors on a chip will double roughly every 24 months.
Now, does that mean that the speed also doubles?
Theoretically.
If you double your speed even once, I'd have an easier time staying awake while you were talking.
Yeah. Well, let me give some examples as quickly as I can. In 1949, the ENIAC computer calculated pi to 2,037 digits in 70 hours. Now, the modern laptop can do the same thing in 3.5 seconds, 5 million times faster than this 1950. Or I can calculate it another way. In 1971, the world's first microprocessor ran at 108 kilohertz. That's each transistor switching at 108,000 times per second. Today's dual-core processors exceed speeds of 2.5 gigahertz, or 2.5 billion operations per second, accepting the hertz measurement as a function of performance.
It seems like about twice as fast.
The modern computer can do more work than the old, so it's not a straight comparison. My laptop has 6,000 times the number of transistors. So you have to divide that 1.2 millimeters by 6,000.
I was afraid of this. However, it does seem to confirm Moore's law.
Adam can work really fast if he's interested in something, but sometimes he moves so slow it just drives me nuts. It's funny, computers are kind of that way too.
You know, I heard once that computers have some kind of built-in timer that gradually slows them down so that whenever a new model comes out, it seems really fast.
Yeah, right. Sounds like an urban legend to me.
You don't believe it's true?
I don't know. No way to tell, really.
All right, so now that was Moore's law. So sorry, this capability is 24 months. It's getting faster and faster, with transistors getting smaller and smaller, which is amazing. And they're just getting tinier and tinier and tinier, which is hilarious. All right, I think it's hilarious just the fact that it's like, how small will it get? Yeah. All right. So that was Moore's law. And we watched the tiny. Now, Pi time. In 2012, the Raspberry Pi is released in March. It's wild. It's been almost 2 years. I got my first Pi in October, but I ordered it in August due to the back order in 2012 because of the popularity of the Pi. And the first time I worked with it was Mr. Dubik introduced it to me back in July of 2012. So it's come a long way. There's a lot more advancements to it since then. Yes, Marissa.
I was just wondering if you knew the exact date in 2012.
I'm pretty sure it was the 16th.
Oh, cool. I was just wondering because it would have been kind of cool if it was on my birthday.
It's on it's the 16th or the 14th.
Okay, my birthday's on the 10th.
Okay. It's supposed to be the first. Yeah. Okay. Cool, Marissa. Thank you. Birthday's coming up soon. Cool. Happy birthday. Now, so the Pi is released. The main reason the Pi was developed by Dr. Upton and other people who were working on the Pi were noticing that with British educators as well, realized that fewer and fewer students and kids were going into programming. And it was due to the way people were working with computers. Before, people were learning how to program, how to make the computer do things for them, and it started moving away from that. Where in the era of the graphical user interface, happy birthday, George, 10 days ago, that the Pi was trying to get kids back into programming because we have become so used to being on Macs and PCs with graphical interfaces where all we do is click and point and click, right? So, with that being said, the Pi was developed so kids would be active participants instead of just being the users of the computer. Yes, Tom.
Why are they called Raspberry Pis?
The Pi. Let me turn it down. The Pi is based off of the mathematical expression, and the Raspberry is based off of a lot of other programming and creations that have like fruit or food type names.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Taha. Taha, excuse me. Thank you. Marissa, is your hand still up, or did I not put it down from previously?
No, I didn't put it on. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marissa. Now, George asked a question. Are we doing Minecraft? No, we are not. We're not doing the Raspberry Pi Minecraft hack. I believe they're doing that in the middle school class with Python. Okay. I have taught that to my 8th grade students. It's pretty cool. You download a Minecraft Raspberry Pi edition. It's very similar to the Pocket edition, and it runs off of Python on the Pi, and then you can create shells for it and upload it in there and create some things. Okay. But thank you for asking, George. Now, with this Pi, they know, like Dr. Upton, I actually went and saw him speak. He's one of the creators of it, with the Raspberry Pi organization, Dr. Upton. And he spoke, and he just noticed that, like, when he was going into programming, when he was going into college, people knew lots of languages, and they knew him very well, and it was very competitive. And by the time he was doing his doctoral work at Cambridge University in England, he noticed that the same program that he was helping mentor now as a doctoral student, that people weren't as sharp. They didn't know as many languages, and the ones they did knew, they weren't very good at them. So they wanted to move to this Raspberry Pi. Now, the Raspberry Pi, all of you have them. They're a little bit larger than a credit card. They're inexpensive, which I need to change that in the slide from expensive computers. For you all, kids, to learn how to program on. And it's because of this advancement of the computer, this history, where going from very large to advancement in programming languages and hardware, transistors, and things are getting smaller. That's the reason the first slide we started off tonight was smartphones and tablets are computers. And because of that smartphone technology, we got this chip right here in the middle, this ARM chip. And that chip, which is made technically for phones for processing, because your phone is a computer, that we won't, yes, Josh, won't, will not. It's able to get this Raspberry Pi down to about $35, give or take, where you're at. If you're in another country or in the U.S. But in the U.S., it goes for about $35, depending on who you buy it from. All right. Now, and this chip is powerful, but it's really cheap. And the thing is, because it's inexpensive, it's just the computer, this whole board here. But a lot of the devices you can get rather cheap to attach to it. And if you make any mistakes, you can wipe the operating system relatively quickly, download Noobs again on a SD card, and there you go. You're back in business. So it's okay to learn and make mistakes through learning. Now, does anyone have any questions before we switch over to the Raspberry Pi presentation? Okay. All right. Thank you, Marissa. Anyone else have any questions about their Pi? Okay. Good, Katie. I'm glad you'd enjoy it so much, this class. Raspberry Pi. All right, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, two things. If you don't have your Pi near you, no problem. I'll tell you what you really need to know. I've already posted one of the presentations. I'll post the slides for you to go back and look at. What I need you to do over the course of this next 5 days to our next class, figure out where you're going to set your Pi up so you can have that set up. And I'm going to go over how to set it up and the materials you'll need for that, as well as have your computer on another webinar. It'll make it easier going back and forth. And you can talk that over with your parents, what the best place to do that by next class. If you have a Pi next to you and you already have it set up, fine, that's fine too. If you don't, but in next class, you're going to have your Pi set up. Okay. Yes, Marissa.
So none of our monitors that we had supported HDMI. That's
All right,
the
we'll be going into another option you can do with your monitors if you have DVI.
yeah. We have a TV. It's kind of big though. Um, that would work. But my dad said he ordered a part that should be here before next Monday. He said he ordered a part that would like let the monitor enable HDMI.
Okay.
So,
I wonder. The thing is, we're gonna go into all that. I'm just giving a blanket command statement right now. Okay.
okay. So we just need to have like the Raspberry Pi set up by next Monday.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Marissa. Katie, go ahead.
I didn't need the HDMI cord. I used the USB and it worked. It turned on my light and it worked without the HDMI cord.
For a monitor or for a display?
The light on the thing turned on.
We're not talking about
It had a
power.
green light and then a red light.
We were talking about display. Are you displaying it on a monitor of sorts?
No.
Okay, that's what I was talking about with Marissa.
Okay. But
Okay.
do you need an HDMI cord? Because some computers don't have the HDMI thing for their computer.
Okay. Ask this question when we get to the point, because I'm going to show you all what the different options you can do.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Okay. This is our Pi. And let's get familiar with it. Some of the hardware. All right. With our Pi, we'll just start in the front down here, your SD card. A few tips about that when you put that in. Make sure it's in all the way and that the metal connectors and prongs are touching one another. If not, the operating system sometimes will not recognize itself because it won't be able to connect due to a bad connection. Secondly, next, be careful with that SD card because the surrounding area that holds the SD card is made out of plastic. And it will break, so make sure you don't catch the SD card because it'll snap that plastic. Yes, Max. Max, your hand's up.
Oh, yeah. So I was working with the Raspberry Pi a little bit, and I can't get my mouse to work.
What type of mouse? Are you using a wireless mouse?
Well, it has like
Are
a
you using a wireless mouse?
It's sort of wireless, yes.
Don't use wireless mice. They don't work well. Okay.
Okay, well, that's the only non-wire like wire. It's the closest I have to a non-wireless mouse.
Okay, you need. The thing is, you're gonna have problems. They don't work great with wireless mouse. A hardwired mouse is your best option.
Okay, so I'll try to get one.
I mean, you can probably go to Goodwill and pick a USB one up for a couple bucks. Used.
Yeah, I have a USB one.
Okay, when I say USB, it's a cord connected to a USB.
Oh, no. No.
Yes. That's the only option is everything is USB based nowadays.
Okay.
Okay. When people refer to USB, it's just the port. Okay. Thank you. All right, moving forward. Next to that is your GPIO pens. These are your general purpose input-output pens. We'll be using those in the future for breakout, for your breadboards. This is your RCA. This is for old school televisions. If you're using old school television, here's your audio connection, your new audio here. These are your LED lights. We will be going over these shortly. Pay attention to these. These signal a lot of information depending on their color and which ones are lit. Next to that, you have two USB connector ports. And then next to that, this is your LAN. This is for your Ethernet cable. So if you want to get on the web, you can hardwire it into like your router or Ethernet port. Okay. You also have the option of buying or using a Wi-Fi USB Bluetooth, so you can get on the internet wirelessly. The internet runs a little bit slower versus a hardwire, but everything has its pros and cons. Then finally is the HDMI. If you have HDMI, you don't need RCA or audio because HDMI runs both. And then with rule of thumb, the last thing you always plug in is your power. Now make sure when you're plugging these things in, you have them incorrectly before you start shoving harder and harder. All right, and then once you have it right, just make sure they're connected and have a snug connection. Here's another way of looking at this. You have an SD card. We gave you one. If you have an HDMI television or monitor, which is the best feature, you can use HDMI. Now, there's another option I'll show you in the next slide. It's a thing called HDMI to DVI. This will allow you to use any monitor that has the white connector port on the back of your monitor. Usually most people use a VGA. With some older monitors, the VGA is the blue cord and you plug it into your computer. If a lot of times next to it, you'll see this white plug. That's DVI. You're like, what do I use that for? It will allow you to convert HDMI to DVI. The Raspberry Pi does not play nice with anything in the realm of VGA. So VGA is out of the option. Once again, RCA, that's with old school video. And then you will need a keyboard and mouse. As I was talking with Max about, a keyboard and mouse that is wireless, they don't work very well. You want to have a hardwired connection. And those are relatively cheap. You might have one laying around in your home from an old computer. Next, Ethernet cable. That's for a hardwire for your internet. Power adapter, we gave you a USB power cord. It needs to, whatever you plug that USB section in from the micro USB, it has to be at least 5 volts. The reason saying if you use anything less than that, your Pi won't turn on. Okay? And then audio lead is optional, but if you're using HDMI, you don't need that anyways. All right. These are the cables I was talking about. HDMI, we all recognize. This is the most modern and up-to-date cord. Excuse me. Clicking. Second next to it, this one right here is the DVI. You see it goes from HDMI to DVI, and this is the old school RCA. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, just as always, if you're asking questions, be specific within the text box because I don't. It makes it easier to process. Yes, Katie.
If you have a laptop, does the mouse on the keypad? Well, does the cursor on the mouse work?
Can you rephrase your question? Are you talking about your laptop?
Yeah, I have a touchpad on my laptop. Will that work when you hook up the Raspberry Pi?
How are you going to take your pad off your laptop and put it on your Raspberry Pi?
Do you have to have something, a key mouse hooking up to it, or can you use your keypad on?
Is your keypad detachable and it has a USB connection?
No.
Then no, you're going to have a mouse.
Oh. So it won't work on a touchpad?
Are you talking about the touchpad on your physical hardware of your laptop?
Yes.
Katie, it's attached to your computer. Unless you did something else where you hooked up your Raspberry Pi to your laptop, that you could still use it. But if you're using what we're recommending, is using it separately, so you'll need a separate mouse.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Marissa, go ahead.
I have a question. It's not like serious, but I just was wondering whether like does the mouse and the keyboard, do they use up like both of the USB ports?
Yes. I got to talk with Mr. Dubik because I know we have some things on back order. I think we're getting you USB hubs. But what you do is you get a powered USB hub, and then you plug that into one of the Pi's hubs, USB hubs, and then you have multiple hubs then.
Okay, cool.
All right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. And Sam. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so the power cord, will that put this picture on your monitor, or do you need an HDMI cord?
You need an HDMI cord. A power cord is for power. HDMI is for visual and audio visual. Excuse me.
Okay, so should we just get one or buy one?
You were given a power cord.
No, the HDMI cord. Do you need those?
Yes. Does your monitor use HDMI? Do you have a monitor or a television?
We have like an old television, but we haven't gotten a monitor yet. We're gonna try and get one.
Okay. Yeah, I recommend it. If you have an old monitor, you can use that has the DVI. You can get that cord instead.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to be posting this physical PowerPoint in there, so you can talk with your parents about it.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. You're welcome, Sam. Yes, Ta.
Which of the connectors work better? The HDMI to DVI, or RCA?
HDMI to HDMI is the best. But
Okay.
if you don't have that option, you got to work with what you got.
Okay. Yeah, we should get the HDMI.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Taha. Just make sure whatever, like, if you get one of these cords, you got to get a cord that works so you can take and plug it from your Pi and plug it into a monitor or television. So whatever works for your situation. For example, the monitor that I had did not have an HDMI on it, but it did have a DVI. So I used the HDMI to DVI. I plugged in the DVI port into my Pi. Then I took the DVI part, and plugged it into my monitor, and it worked. Where I have taken the HDMI dual cable, took it off of my TV, because my TV has HDMI. You can turn your TV into a monitor. It's really cool. I was over my friend's house. He has like a 70-inch TV in his living room. We were working on Pi stuff. We unplugged it out of his like cable box on one end and then plugged it into his Pi. He had a 70-inch Raspberry Pi monitor then. So you might have a lot of this stuff around your house already. All right. Moving forward. All right. Here is the way that you set up your Pi. The first thing you do is always put the SD card in and check it. The next thing is do your display, either whatever way you're going to do that. Either HDMI, which I figure most people will be doing. And then you're going to connect your mouse and your keyboard and the USB ports. Then if you ever have the option of using internet through an Ethernet, it's only for Ethernet. The last thing you will do is plug in the power. We want everything else to be connected first before we use the power. Okay? Now, this is your power cord. As I said, 5 volts for it to boot up. And all it matters, you can plug it into a phone charger or into another electronic device that has a USB port. But if your Pi doesn't power up or boot up, start up, It's due to the fact that that USB port is not producing enough power for your Pi. So you'll have to put it in. Last night at my Charlotte makeup lab, I was working with someone. We plugged it into a monitor that had an extra USB port. Sometimes keyboards have. The monitor's USB didn't have enough to power something. It had enough to pull information off, like a flash drive, but it didn't have enough, so we had to plug it into something else. Doesn't mean it's your Pi's broke or not working, but it's just not pulling enough power. Now, speaking of this, Mr. Dubik, I believe has said this, and I'm going to repeat it. We gave you the parts that you need. Gave you a Pi, gave you what you're going to be using. Now, if you happen to break one of those, you will have to replace that on your own, okay? Now, let's continue ahead. Now, when your computer, Raspberry Pi boots up, and we're going to learn how to configure some things and what the desktop tells us. Okay, so let's keep going. To get your Pi working, there's a few troubleshooting techniques that you can do. All right. If you plug your Pi in, you're all ready to go, and you plug your power cord in, you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then there's no lights turn on, those LED lights. If there are no lights turning on, specifically a red light, then you have no power. So check your power cord or check your power source. Now, let's say you do have power, which is indicated by the red LED light, and you don't have any other lights turning on, specifically a green one. That means your SD card isn't working, not connected, or needs to be pushed in further. So check your SD card, everybody. All right? Now, let's say, hey, your red light's working, your SD card is LED light is green. You're like, yeah, my operating system's working, I got power, but there's nothing coming on my display. What do I do? Check your cables and everything that's attached for your monitors. Your monitor on? Is your TV on? Is the cable connected? Is it all the way attached? Is it a little bit loose? Is it ajar? Check those, okay? Give me a hand raise if you understand these 3 steps for troubleshooting. All right. Excellent job. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus light on the Raspberry Pi. There is a yellow light. The yellow light will indicate internet. All right. So red is for power, green is for operating system, and yellow is for internet. Okay. And I will be reviewing those questions. You'll have a review questions before we're done tonight. All right. Now, let's go over the desktop. What are all of these things mean? Another thing is, at first, you're going to have to get used to using it, just like anything. But I encourage you over the weekend, get everything up and running. And so, because when we start our lab on Monday, I'm expecting all of you to have your Raspberry Pi set up before class, okay? So that you can try things out as we go through class and do activities on your Pi. If you understand that you have to have your Pi set up and ready to go for our classes starting Monday, raise your hand. Okay, excellent job, everyone. All the hands went up. Very good, very good. Now, the first icon is the Pi Store. The Pi Store is cool. It came out last year, matter of fact, or late 2012. Yeah, 2012, late 2012. So it's a hackerspace, and I downloaded it. It is basically like any of these new Google stores or the App Store type of deal. You can go in, you can explore and look for different things that have been created or programs that run on your Raspbian operating system, which is a Linux-based operating system on your Raspberry Pi. Okay. Next thing is Wolfram. Wolfram, this is new to the noobs. Raspbian system. Now, this is a computational knowledge engine, so you can set up computations as well as like mathematical equations and run them and test them, formulas, if you will. And when you open it up, you can design them and use that there. Okay. Now, the thing after it is the Debian reference. This is kind of like a user help guide for learning about your Debian operating system here. So you can look things up and learn other cool features. Okay. Now, Mathematica is part of Wolfram, and what it's used for is like math applications, and it's completely free on the Raspberry Pi, which is great for all of you. It's a great mathematics reference and tool that you can use. Okay. Now, the IDLE and this blue, yellowish, rounded cross shapes that you see all indicate Python, the language Python. The reason there's an IDLE and there's another one will be IDLE 3, it's just the version of it. You can learn to program in Python. There's a lot of cool things that you can download and run. As we were talking about, someone asked about the Minecraft. Actually, what we did with Minecraft is got the Pocket Edition for Raspberry Pi and did coding in Python to create codes that you can then take the shell. Here is a shell. It's almost like a notepad, and you can program in it, and it's line coding. It's very user friendly that you use, and you can end up moving forward and then saving it and uploading it into Raspberry Pi Minecraft Pocket Edition. Okay. Now after that is the OCR resources. These are just more Raspberry Pi resources that are here for you to use and learn more about your Pi. All right. And it's more of like it gives you Raspberry Pi updates and etc. And when I mean updates, like the Raspberry Pi, because it's open source, there's a lot of new things that come out, and there's like a whole community that you can be a part of with the Raspberry Pi. And also, they offer a free Raspberry Pi a whole magazine that comes out that gives you cool projects and coding practice activities and stuff. All right. Once again, like I said, this is another version of Python. Once again, you open it up and you have your shell. And it'll allow you to code and make changes, etc. Okay. And we'll continue touring the desktop. Up to the next top of the column is the LX terminal. This is the terminal that is really cool. Instead of this just being a user face or a graphical interface, this takes it old school. It allows us to do prompts, command prompts, and actually do some coding, not coding, but allows us to orchestrate things within our Raspberry Pi that'll allow us to control it as once the way computers used to be before graphical interface, which is pretty cool. When you click on that, you'll have your terminal that pops up, and you can do different prompts and commands and find things out about your Raspberry Pi. You can run things out of the terminal, which is awesome stuff. And as you start to grow and learn, there's so much resources out there for Linux to help you grow and learn more with this. The next is a shutdown button. You can click on that, it shuts down your computer. Before the old version of this Raspbian operating system, you would have to do a command prompt to shut it down or go under the equivalent of a start menu to get it to shut down. What we have the luxury of using now is this. I will, for next class, have the prompt command for you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can use that. I think it's cooler going in there. Like I can type a button and it's like, and it shuts it down. Next is Midori, which Maya in our last class stated Midori means green in Japanese. Midori is a search engine. Not a search engine, excuse me. It is a internet browser. Is the equivalent of Safari or Internet Explorer, etc. That this will allow you to surf the web, go to websites, links, etc. You can use Midori. But it always starts off on this cool thing called, it's like a Google or a Bing, but it's called GoGoDuck, or no, DuckDuckGo, excuse me. Having the play on words of Duck, Duck, Goose. It's pretty, I think it's funny. Next is the Wi-Fi config. Now, if you get a, thank you, Katie, I'll check that out. Now, if you get a Wi-Fi, USB Wi-Fi Blue, like Bluetooth, plug, connector, you can plug it into your Pi. And the thing that's awesome about this is it's just like any normal setup. You just go through your IP address, type that in, password, boom, you're connected. Before they didn't have this, and you had to go through and actually set it up through the LX terminal, which I did, and that's a blast. Real big joy. It's fun, but it really makes you think about what you're doing, and you have to know a lot more. There's a lot, and the thing is, in the past 2 years, a lot of things are out there now in tutorials on how to use and create things and move forward with the Pi. Yes, Tom.
Yes, I'm muted.
Why are we using the Pi if we can like just download Python on the computer?
That's a good question. It's all in one on here. It's open source. It's inexpensive. It's very feasible to people, and if you can't really mess it up. We take it for granted that a lot of people have computers, but this gives you the opportunity to try different things. You can do physical computing as well, where that's the reason we gave you that breadboard and all those wires last time. You're going to use coding language on here, code something, and then control LEDs, for example.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a lot more open source activity. Okay, thank you, Todd. Yes, Marissa.
It's like you said earlier. Like you know, there was that slide that like that British guy. He noticed that kids were
Dr.
like,
Upton.
What?
Dr. Upton.
Yeah. He noticed that kids were just like not like interested in computers, like the actual making and programming and all that other stuff of them. Like it was to a point where you just point and click. Like that's why they made this, right?
Yes, you're completely correct. Very good. Thank you, Marissa. All right. Next is Python games. When you go in, there's a bunch of free games that come on it that are made out of Python. And you can go and play those, and some are better than others. Lastly is Scratch. We did Scratch last semester. We did Scratch 2.0. We will use Scratch a little bit to teach people in our course who have not used it before. We'll be doing something different, but also we'll be using Scratch to do some physical computing. There's a version of Scratch that we'll end up using called Scratch GPIO, which that version allows you to control things that you plug into your Pi, which is pretty cool. All right, LX Terminal. There is a very important line of code I'm going to send out to everyone, and I want you to write down. It is sudo raspi-config. And I just sent it to everyone. That there allows you to do a few things. It takes you to the feature within the computer that allows you to make configurations and changes to your operating system. All right. Once again, that is sudo raspi-config. You type that in, and it's raspi-config, and you hit return. And what will happen is you'll have the Raspberry Pi software configuration tool, aka raspi-config. And here you have expand file systems, change user password, enable boot to desktop, internationalization options, enable camera, add to rest track, overclock, advanced options, and about Raspberry config. Now, before this version of this noobs, what you would have to do is you would get your Pi, and you would plug it in, it would boot up, and then it would scroll the screen down. And what it would look like at the bottom was a bunch of numbers, and then your terminal like this. It would just say this Raspberry Pi, and it would ask for a username and password. And you would have to type this Pi and then Raspberry in. And then when you ran that, it would you would finally get the desktop screen. Now, they've changed this with the noobs, so you don't have to do that. And that's what we're going to look at. If you hit return, go to enable boot to desktop. We're going to make it go from booting to that having to log in every time to going right to your desktop. And what you do is you enable boot desktop, then go to desktop login as user Pi as the graphical desktop. All right. And after you do that, you'll just hit OK. And next thing you know, hey, you're booting to you'll boot to your desktop the next time you load it. Now, there's other options there, but you don't need those. You'll set it up for that. Then, the next thing you're going to make a change to is the internationalization option. This allows you to change your language, your time zone, your keyboard layout. We're going to go to keyboard layout because your Raspberry Pi comes preset on a UK version, a British version of the PC keyboard. If you weren't aware, most countries have a different version of the keyboard that we use. The UK's version is very similar, but there are some major differences. So what you need to do is get the generic keyboard model, and we're going to go the 105 keys, and then go to Other. And you just use your Enter and your arrow keys to do this. After you go to Other, you go to English US, because we're in the US. After that, you will scroll through and find whatever keyboard you have. If you have a Mac, use the Macintosh. If you have a PC, find a general PC version, okay? Once again, internationalization. Let's change the keyboard layout. Try to do general, go Other for language of the keyboard, which would be English US, and then select it further. Now, after that, we'll go default for the keyboard layout, which just means we're going to use a general default layout. for your keyboard. After that, hit OK, and then it will say no compost key. We're not going to be doing anything special, so just hit no. And lastly, and this is one of those things like, oh, Mr. J, you're moving too fast. You really can't do anything else. It's just common sense. And we'll also have I'm going to put the slides up online on Edmodo, so you can check that. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of Edmodo, make sure you're checking Edmodo frequently during the week. Edmodo is our major communication. That's the way we communicate with everybody. So always be checking Edmodo. And then hit no here. Now, the last types of options we're going to look at is the advanced options, and we're going to do the overscan. The reason we do the overscan is that this is a good habit of the certain Raspberry Pi features don't do this, that this will expand your SD card. However big your SD card, if not, you don't do this traditionally, you can't use all the extra storage. We want to use all the extra storage because the actual Raspbian operating system takes up very little of your computer. Now, expand file systems, bada bing, you're done. You end up back at your desktop. Okay? Now, anyone have any questions? All right, Brendan.
I already got my Raspberry Pi set up a few weeks ago, and I was just kind of messing around on Scratch. Is there like a kind of homework assignment or something that you're going to give us, or you could give us?
Not right now. What you could do is do research on Scratch GPIO.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to give you as your homework. If you can figure out how to download Scratch GPIO, try that out. Since you want to get ahead, Brendan, do that.
Okay.
All right, there's your homework. Thank you, Brendan. You can do that, Brendan. You'll be ahead of the game. All right, anyone else? Because there's more to that, Brendan. You would either know how to download things on your Pi if you're going to be hooked to the internet, and which would be pretty useful to you. Josh, I'm going to unmute you. Yes, Josh.
I don't have a Raspberry Pi. Where did everyone get theirs?
Last night in the lab, we handed them out in Charlotte. Secondly, the previous lab in Raleigh, they were handed out there.
Oh.
And if you were not at a lab, please have your parents contact Mr. Dubik and see if you guys can pick one up from him.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Josh.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's 7:30. Just a reminder to everyone, if you want something printed on a 3D printer, you have to send it to me or Mr. Dubik. Email us it or post it on Edmodo if you want something printed for you. Okay? If not, any other questions? Yes, Taha.
Yes, I'm muted.
What's your email address?
Let me send it out.
We don't have a keyboard. We'll have to buy a new one. We threw it out.
What? Why did you throw it?
That's a bummer.
Let's see what is working on.
All right. There you go, Taha. All right. Marissa? Marissa?
So how exactly do we send you something that like we want 3D printed?
You have to send me the STL file. We went over that. If you don't know how to do that, go back into the webinars.
Oh, you just went over that. Okay. Well, my dad will definitely know how to do that. And also, I was wondering, what are we going to do with the breadboard that we got?
We're going to do physical computing, where you're going to learn how to use a breadboard, connect it to your Pi, and then after you connect it to your Pi, we'll program and turn on LEDs and different things.
Okay. And your email is taylor.davidc@gmail.com?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and 2 more questions. George.
I was wondering, I have sent Mr. Dubik I sent him the 3D model that I wanted printed.
Okay.
And would I pick that up in the next lab?
It all depends on if he has it done. I don't know when you sent it to him. When did you send it to him, sir?
I think I sent it to him like yesterday.
Okay, yeah. It depends. He and I have been backed up with work. We're gonna try to get these to you, but due to the snow, we weren't able to do as much. So we're running a little bit behind on things. So just have some patience with that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, George. And next is Brendan. Yes, Brendan.
Did you say you wanted me to download Scratch GPIO?
Yes, if you can download Scratch GPIO and have it functioning on your Pi, you've learned to do a bunch of different things there. Okay?
Okay, I forgot. I couldn't hear what you said.
Okay.
You said Scratch.
Here, I'll send it out. Scratch GPIO. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, everyone, have a great night. And as always, thank you for being part of Young Engineers today.